Hello everyone, my name is Jana Stupowski and I'm your data visualization instructor. In today's video, we're going to talk about what questions you could ask of a data set that you're working with. After you get a new data set to work with and you do your research and you learn enough about the industry and you scan through the data dictionary and you understand all the variables that you have there, you can then start exploring what kind of questions would be appropriate to ask of the data set and start figuring out if the data set could answer those questions and how. There are a total of 5 questions to ask, and there are many variations of those questions. Let's review them together. With any data set, there are typically 5 generic questions to ask. When, where, what or which, who, and how. The amount of these questions can vary for each data set. It just depends on how many variables do we have in a data set and what data types are available in each data set. But ultimately, it'll also come down to the audience that we will have for the data set and what answers would the audience want to get from the data set. And so we'll have to understand our variables and the industry well to be able to make that judgment. Let's review these questions more thoroughly together, one after another. So we've got a little sample data set here in front of us. We have a date column, we've got a category, product category column, we've got a subcategory, we've got sales, which is a dollar currency type data type, and then we've got a state column, which is a location type data. Going further, let's look at the question number 1, and that would be when. So if we want to figure out some questions to ask of our data set here, we could ask something like, when did the most food items sell? Or when did Texas hit the highest sales? As you can see, to be able to answer those questions, we would want to have some sort of a date field or date and time field, which we currently do in this data set. So by questions, when we're asking when, we're addressing really a time series. And answers for these questions are best visualized in charts showing trends or developments over time. A timeline is a typical time series type of visualization. Another question we can ask of a data set is a question where. In this case, if we're looking at our data set, we could ask something like, where were the highest sales? Or where did office supplies sell the most? Naturally, if we want to answer a where question, we need to have some sort of geographic or location related variable or column in our data set. In this case, we have a state column, so we are able to answer these questions. And really the best way to answer or one of the good ways to answer such questions would be a map. But in addition to state, we naturally could have additional columns referring to country or region or state or city or even a county or town. The next question would be a what or which question. If we're looking and trying to create a question from this data set, we could ask something like, what subcategory sells the most in Mississippi? Or which are the top 3 states leading in sales? Typically, questions like that address rankings of items, for instance, products, and best answers are best visualized by bar or column charts, or part to whole charts where sorting has been applied. And so, for instance, answering the question, which are the top 3 states, we could have a bar chart and we could sort the states from the top selling to the lowest selling, and we can easily draw conclusion from what the top 3 states leading in sales are. Fourth type of question would be a who question. We don't really have an option here in this data set to answer that question, but it could be something like who leads the sales this month, or who has the most turnovers. And these questions typically address rankings or performance of people, departments, members, teams, etc., if such data is available. So to be able to even develop a question like that, we would want to have a data set that would include a variable or a column with such items as people, customers, departments, teams, members, etc. And again, the best way, similarly as the previous question, the best way to answer these questions would be with a bar or column charts where we apply sorting, and we can very easily see the top sellers or top performers versus bottom performers. And then the last question would be a how question, where we try to look at how 2 items relate to each other. So we would be exploring correlation. For instance, how do sales relate to location? And the best way to answer such questions would be scatter plots. So again, to summarize what kind of questions we can ask of a data set, it would be when, where, what or which, who, and how. To go back to my previous slide, I just want to share with you a really good resource for types of charts that could answer various questions. And that would be a visual vocabulary designed by Andy Kriebels, and you will find a link for this under this video. But here, let's say we're looking at correlation, and these are various options of chart types that could address a correlation or the how question. Visual vocabulary was inspired by Financial Times graphics, and here you can pick type of scenario that you try to address. So we talked about change over time earlier. With a when question, you can click here and you can see all sorts of alternatives to a traditional timeline that could help address a time-related question in this case. That is all for me for today. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. And again, I look forward to sharing more videos with you.